Noel is an edgy young man who wants to become the world's strongest seeker, but he gets stuck with the weakest support class possible, a talker. In this world, there are phenomena called abyss that are connected to the depths of hell, and on this godforsaken day, matchmaking was busted so Noel's village got attacked by level 12 demons. Noel's grandfather is the only one in the village who has the skills to put up a fight against the demons, so he grabs his axe and tells Noel to stay hidden while he holds off the demons until help arrives. However, Noel knows there's no way help is coming for them in a situation like this, and fighting all those demons alone is a death sentence. He doesn't believe his grandpa can make it back alive from something like that, but his grandpa assures him that he can handle it. After all, he has defeated a level 13 demon before, and people don't call him over death for nothing. After that, he went out to face the demons, and while he may have put up a good fight and taken out a bunch of demons, Grandpa still got cooked so bad that his legs are in a different time zone. Noel rushes to his side, and Grandpa apologizes for not being strong enough to survive like he promised, but he had no choice if he wanted to protect the village. This is the fate all Seekers are doomed to because of the life of combat they've dedicated themselves to. Grandpa asks if Noel is going to follow his footsteps even after witnessing the dangers of the job, and with tears in his eyes, Noel declares that he will become the most powerful Seeker in the world, and Noel promises to become the world's strongest Seeker to carry on his grandpa's legacy. We then cut to present day when Noel has fulfilled his promise and became a Seeker to follow in his grandpa's footsteps. And although he's giving his teammates orders, he is far from the strongest on the team since he possesses the weakest support class, the Talker. The monsters Noel's team has been fighting are called lesser vampires, and they can't use magic, but they are troublesome to deal with since the Vampire Queen can reproduce in a short amount of time and give rise to a new army. Noel warns his party members not to let their guard down, because the lesser vampires are still insanely strong and they can continue fighting even when severely injured, so each one needs to be double tapped. The party continues through the dungeon, and Walter asks Noel if they can just ignore all the lesser vampires and head straight for the Queen, so they can complete the mission quickly. However, Noel tells him that that is a dumb idea since they would end up being surrounded by lesser vampires while they fight the Queen. This mission is already difficult enough for a C-rank party like them to handle, so recklessly charging forward would surely get them killed. Walter gets the message, but he sarcastically says he is only listening to Noel because he is the important talker of the party. As a talker, Noel is able to enhance his party members with buff words, but his personal strength is far below average and it really frustrates him. So Noel turns around and is about to roast the self-confidence out of Walter. However, before he can say anything, he notices a lesser vampire camping on the ceiling, and it's definitely planning something, so he orders his team to take cover. Just then, the vampire releases a poisonous cloud, and Noel is caught right in the middle of it. The others see that Noel is in danger, so they want to rush over and save him. But before they can act, they get attacked by the vampire and Tanya gets knocked down. Walter and Lloyd try to stop the demon, but without Noel's buffs, they are much weaker than they were before, so Walter pleads with Noel to snap out of it and give them some orders. Noel hears this, and he has a flashback to the day his grandpa died, so he swears to himself that he won't let anyone else die and pulls out a gun to fire several shots at the demon while also drinking a health potion to recover from the poison. He may not have the same kind of strength his grandfather did, but that doesn't mean he is completely useless, and he plans to showcase just how important a talker can be. He activates his Talker Tactician skill, and now when he gives his teammates orders, their abilities are boosted by 25%. He then uses his Battle Voice skill, and is able to increase the stamina and mana of his team. With Noel's help, the team is now able to hold their ground, but above them, Tanya spots 3 more demons, and she starts freaking out, so Noel uses one of his skills to get her to calm down. If everything goes according to plan from here, Noel predicts that the team should be able to finish the monsters off in 74 seconds, so he tells the others that he will handle the rest of the lesser vampires, so they should focus on taking down the Queen and prepare to use their strongest attacks. As the lesser of vampires attack Noel, he uses a speech technique and yells at them to make them freeze in place, and once they are unable to move, he uses his magic gun to shoot an ice bullet and encase them in a block of ice. Unfortunately, one of the lesser vampires managed to dodge the attack, but he still has 1 bullet left in the chamber, so he has the option of freezing the last lesser vampire to save himself. However, he decides to fire the bullet at the Queen to distract it and provide an opening for his teammates instead. Thanks to this, Walter and Lloyd are able to hit the Queen with their ultimate moves and take it down. But when Tanya turns to Noel to celebrate their victory, she is horrified as she sees him getting stabbed by the lesser vampire. Fortunately, it turns out that Noel wasn't really stabbed, as he perfectly calculated things to make sure he would survive. He knew that once the queen was defeated, all the lesser vampires would naturally stop moving, and there was just enough time for him to avoid being killed. With this, the team has successfully cleared the dungeon and the surrounding abyss dissipates. Noel's teammates come over to check on him, and while they know he planned it all carefully, they still scold him for recklessly endangering his life like that. Noel thinks back to the day when he first learned that he was a talker, and he was crying his eyes out because he wanted to be a warrior like his grandpa. His grandpa told him not to worry about it since regardless of his class, he is sure Noel will grow up to become the world's strongest seeker because he could sense incredible talent within him. Ever since that day, Noel hasn't been discouraged by his support class and remains determined to become the world's strongest seeker, even though he's just a talker. After their mission is complete, the party has to head back to Etria, the capital of the Velnet Empire, so they can report their success. The Empire is more susceptible to abyss attacks than other nations, so to fight this, the Empire developed magical technology using the materials they acquired from the demons. The material used to develop this technology can only be acquired with the help of Seekers, so Seekers are admired by the public for their contributions to society. Noel officially became a Seeker when he was 15, so he moved to the capital and found himself some companions since he couldn't fight alone as a Seeker. Walter over here is the warrior of the party, Tanya is the healer, and Loy is the swordsman. So although Noel would love to have a scout as well, all in all, their team is pretty balanced. Walter notices that Noel is being really quiet for some reason, so he asks if something is wrong. The party got a reward of 5 million Phil for completing the quest, so Walter asks if Noel is upset that they didn't negotiate for more money. He then tells Noel that a Seeker shouldn't get so hung up on money, and that his grandpa probably would have said the same thing, but on the contrary, the first lesson Grandpa taught Noel was that no matter what he does, he better be getting paid top dollar because he can't be risking his life just to go home broke at the end of the day. With that being said, Noel definitely wanted a higher reward, and he couldn't care less about what Walter thinks, but he will let it go just this once. Tanya tells Walter to quit bothering Noel, but he still insists that Noel should show him more respect since he is 2 years older than him. Noel retorts that age means nothing among Seekers, as the only thing that will earn you respect is your strength, and Noel is starting to question if Walter is really competent enough to be respected. Walter blows up and yells that Noel is the only one here who is incompetent because all he ever does is give orders from the back while the rest of them risk their lives on the front line. Noel thought he had a good dynamic with the team, but now he realizes that they all see him as a burden despite all the things he does for them. But before addressing that, he insults Walter one more time and is about to start a fight with him. However, Lloyd steps in and separates the two of them before anything bad happens. He then changes the subject and suggests that they call it a day and start splitting up their rewards. A little while later, they are all sitting by the fountain and Tanya is disappointed with how little she ended up getting after such a difficult mission. Lloyd explains that after all the equipment costs and taxes they had to pay, there was only 1 million Phil left, so each team member only gets 250,000. He agrees that it's frustrating, but their party's funds are steadily increasing, so he's sure they'll make more money the next time they get a big mission like this. Noel points out that there isn't going to be a next time because they almost never get big missions because clans get all the high-profile abysses, and even when they do get the missions, they will be forced to pay a penalty fee if they fail to clear it on their own, so it's not sustainable. That aside, Noel asks Lloyd how much money their party has in its joint funds account. Lloyd tells him they have 12.8 million saved up, so Noel suggests that the team should invest that money in forming their own clan. Everyone is shocked that he would suggest such a thing, and Lloyd tries explaining all the reasons why they can't do that, mainly because they would be required to pay 20 million to the country in order to set one up, and they don't have that much money. However, Noel isn't deterred and says he is willing to use 7.2 million of his personal money to make up the difference. He knows it's an expensive decision, but he assures everyone that in the long run, they'll gain much more money since they won't be limited to the leftover quests anymore. Lloyd then points out that they would need to acquire a base of operations within the capital, and rent prices are outrageous nowadays. However, Noel's already got that covered and found a cheap building for their team to rent. Tanya then chimes in and mentions that they are all still C-rank newbies, so they couldn't possibly handle running a clan, but Noel doesn't think that's a good excuse to avoid forming a clan. If they don't take the leap now, then they'll never be ready to run a clan on their own. Noel has been studying all about how to run a clan, so he knows all about the necessary procedures that need to be taken. The only thing he doesn't have is experience, and the only way to get clan experience is to start a clan. So while it may be difficult, there's no other way. Noel makes a good point, but even so, Lloyd still believes they won't be given any good jobs since they have proven themselves to be trustworthy. But that's where Lloyd is wrong. Noel can guarantee that they will be given a bunch of good jobs, and it has nothing to do with them being trustworthy. They are going to get jobs because they are hot. This country wants more seekers, and a great seeker is considered both a hero and an idol. So the country will naturally treat them better because they are good looking. Tanya doesn't think it's a good idea since they would practically be selling themselves, but Walter is already sold on the idea because he has been getting sick of the mediocre life they've been living. He wants to experience fame and wealth, and there's nothing Tanya can say that will talk him out of it. Walter and Noel are in agreement on this, so Noel asks Lloyd what his opinion is as the leader of the party. If Lloyd wants to say no, then Noel is prepared to quit the party and take his share of the savings so he can form a clan with someone else because he has a dream to become the strongest seeker, and he won't let anything get in his way. Lloyd gets a dark look in his eyes as he is left with no choice but to accept Noel's demands. However, he suggests they discuss the details of this clan formation the day after tomorrow. Walter is fine with that, and Noel is glad he was able to get Tanya and Lloyd on board with his idea, so he leaves to rest for the night. However, later that day, Walter comes running to Noel with terrible news as he has just discovered that Lloyd and Tanya have betrayed them and disappeared with all the money. After Noel reads the letter, he confirms what happened. Lloyd invested all his money in NFTs a couple years back, and now he is in a deep pile of debt. So he embezzled the party's money to pay off his debt and fled the capital before he could be found out. Noel finds this whole thing insanely funny since Lloyd always upheld the act of a noble and chivalrous person. But getting down to business, Noel asks Walter when and where he found this letter. Walter explains that he heard about a really good job last night, so he headed to Lloyd's room first thing in the morning to tell him about it. But by the time he arrived, Lloyd had already cleaned out his room, and that's when the innkeeper showed him the letter. According to the innkeeper, Lloyd and Tanya left the inn around 8 p.m. last night, just before the city gates closed, and under normal circumstances, neither Noel nor Walter would have found out about this until the following afternoon, so Lloyd was trying to buy as much time as possible before the escape. It's 9:30 in the morning now, so while they may have found out sooner than Lloyd expected, it has still been over half a day, so he and Tanya must have covered a considerable distance by now. However, the gates must have records of which direction they were headed in, and they most likely left on foot, so Noel and Walter should be able to catch up if they take a horse. Walter is eager to get going, but Noel reminds him that this isn't as simple as chasing after them and getting the money back. Those two chose to abandon their party, and that's a definite betrayal, so worst case, if they catch up and confront them, it'll become a battle to the death. And even if they do beat Lloyd and Tanya, it would be a waste of time because Lloyd already spent all their money, but that doesn't mean Noel is going to let them get away without suffering for what they did. After getting dressed, Noel takes Walter down to the local tavern, but Walter doesn't understand why they are here. Noel doesn't want to waste time explaining the plan to Walter since he's too dumb to understand it anyway, so he just tells him to follow his lead. Noel heads inside and immediately gets the attention of everyone in the tavern. He tells them that 2 members of his party have stolen his party's money and escaped the capital, so he's willing to pay 2 million fils to anyone who can bring them back alive. Walter starts freaking out and asks Noel why he went and announced their predicament to the entire tavern, but Noel says there's a particular person he's looking for, so he just did this to save time. The first party to accept Noel's mission is the Lightning Bite Party, so Noel gives the leader all the information he has about Lloyd and Tanya's escape, and soon after, several more parties decide to take the job, but Noel still hasn't found the person he was looking for. All of a sudden, a shady-looking man approaches Noel about his job offer, and this guy looks like he knows something, which is what Noel was waiting for. They head outside to talk, and the man explains that he saw a couple leaving town yesterday, and they perfectly match the description Noel gave. He's sure he knows where they are headed. The only problem is that the man's party isn't strong enough to defeat Lloyd and Tanya on their own, so Noel offers to help, but he will only be paying the man 1 million in exchange. The man tries to argue for the 2 million, but Noel has already read him like a book, so he knows that the man is too broke to turn down the 1 million. Eventually, the man caves in and agrees to the terms, so Noel tells him to get his party ready and meet him at the south gate. He also tells Walter to wait for him there because Noel has something he needs to do first. A little while later, Noel is done with his preparations, so he meets everyone at the front gate, and Walter has something he has been meaning to talk to Noel about. He wants to know if Noel is going to be alright fighting Lloyd and Tanya, but Noel has no reservations about it. and you will gladly kill them with no mercy whatsoever. Walter can't believe Noel feels nothing after they were partners for so long, but from the day they met, Noel had already come up with contingency plans to take them down if they ever betrayed him. He even has a plan to take down Walter, so never actually trusted any of them to begin with, and Walter could stand be less trusting in the future. Later that day, in a remote village, Lloyd and Tanya are walking, and Lloyd assures her that they should be safe for now, so they can rest easy tonight. He is sure that there is no way Noel would be petty enough to come after them even though the money has already been spent, but Lloyd gravely underestimated how petty Noel really is because he appears behind them, along with a full squad of people to capture them. Lloyd is about to draw his sword to fight, but Noel uses his ability to tell him not to move, and both he and Tanya are stunned in place. Now that Lloyd has nowhere left to run, Walter begins yelling at him for his betrayal. However, before he can punch Lloyd's face in, Noel says there's something he wants to ask. He knows that Lloyd already spent all the party's savings, but the money they got paid for the vampire hunt must still be in his possession, right? Lloyd denies having the money and says he used that as well, so Noel asks if he spent it on another failed NFT business, but Lloyd admits that he used the money to pay back his debts. The way Lloyd answers gives Noel all the information he needs, so he now realizes that Lloyd is a serial gambler. He must have gambled so much that he ended up in trouble with some debt collectors, but Noel wants to hear it from Lloyd's mouth. Lloyd is about to apologize again, but Walter cuts him off and yells at him for gambling away all the money they worked hard to save. Lloyd gives up on the innocent act and tells back that he is the real victim here. He didn't want to touch the party's money, but gambling was so much fun, and besides, it was their own fault for dumping the responsibility of leading on his shoulders. At this point, Noel has heard enough BS, so he kicks Lloyd in the face and starts stomping on him for thinking he could get away with such half-ass blame shifting. He was the one who said he wanted to become the leader, all just so he could find his gambling addiction. Before long, Lloyd has been beaten bloody, and he is begging for forgiveness, but Noel has never heard of such a word, so he will gladly be at Lloyd 1,000 times until he is satisfied. Tanya speaks up and begs Noel to spare Lloyd, and Noel says fine, but only if she's willing to take the beating in his place. Noel is a proud believer of gender equality, so he has no problem curb stomping her if that's what she really wants. He uses his power and tells her to confess her involvement, and once she is compelled to tell the truth, she admits that she gambled the party's money with Lloyd, and in fact, she's even more of a gambling addict than Lloyd is. The move Noel just used forces the target to reveal the absolute truth no matter what for a short amount of time. And once Tanya regains her senses, she yells at Noel for daring to use mind control on her because it is against Imperial law. Noel agrees and says she is right about it being illegal to use mind control for personal reasons, but right now she is the criminal here, so Noel's use of mind control is considered interrogation and is perfectly legal. Now that Noel is done talking to the traitors, the man asks Noel for his payment, and Noel agrees to pay him, but he just needs a minute first. The man doesn't like being told to wait, so he grabs Noel and accuses him of trying to scam them out of the money, but Noel drags the man to the floor and assures him that he will be paid for his work, so he should just be quiet and wait. The man is pissed, so he draws his knife and is about to attack Noel, but threatening Noel was the worst mistake he could have made because Noel immediately knocks him unconscious with a punch to the chest. Noel had learnt this technique from his grandpa by experiencing it firsthand. It is a strong blow directly to the area above the heart and can temporarily paralyze the heart muscles, causing even the most experienced seekers to faint if done properly. Noel's grandpa wanted him to learn this technique because as a talker, he can't buff himself, so this would at least give him some offensive ability. The man's teammates drag his unconscious body out of the road, and soon enough, a friend of Noel's pulls up in a fancy carriage. The man is an infamous slave trader, Finocchio Barzini, and he seems to be on good terms with Noel. He is the leader of the Barzini family, and Noel knows him to be quite eccentric and zesty, but he's the only one that can help him out, so he had to contact him. If it wasn't obvious yet, Noel intends to sell Lloyd and Tanya to Finocchio as slaves in order to make back the money they stole from him. Tanya protests, but Noel reminds her that he could always just turn her into the police, and jail time here means she will be sent down to the mines. And let me tell you, the mines are not fun. They'd have a much higher chance of surviving if they become slaves and hopefully get bought by a kind master. With that said, Noel asks Finocchio to begin evaluating the two for sale, but when he's done, Finocchio only offers to buy them for $6 million. Noel says that isn't enough, and Finocchio apologizes, but this is a bad time for him, so he can't offer any more than this. The Holy Cross Church is about to decree that everyone must take a vow of poverty, so if Finocchio offered top dollar for the Lloyd and Tanya, it would draw too much attention, and he would like to avoid that. Noel didn't realize the church held so much influence over a family as powerful as the Benazzi family, but it doesn't matter. He says he will accept 11 million as payment, and it takes a while for Finocchio to realize, but when he does, he starts yelling about Noel trying to get an extra 5 million. Because of the constant yelling, Noel keeps increasing the price until he is eventually asking for 15 million when Finocchio initially only offers 6. Finocchio was starting to get really pissed off, but Noel tells him that if he buys the two for 15 million, he will tell everyone that Finocchio only paid 13 million instead. The church's decree just means Finocchio can't buy things that are overpriced, but if he claims that Lloyd and Tanya are genuinely worth the money, people will be lining up to buy them solely because they are expensive. If Finocchio plays his cards right, he might even be able to sell them for as high 90 million. Finocchio is insanely impressed by how cunning Noel is, so he offers him a leadership position in his family, but Noel turns him down. Finocchio understands and he is on board with the deal, but before he finalizes things, he hoes over to the scruffy guy and his party to warn them not to say a word about any of this unless they want to die painful deaths. With that said, he hands Noel a down payment for the two slaves and begins taking them away. Tanya pleads with Noel not to do this, but again, forgiveness doesn't exist in his dictionary, so she turns to Walter and asks him to do something about it. She knows Walter has a crush on her, so she expects him to save her, but Walter refuses, so she starts laying into him with every insult she can come up with, and the look on Walter's face is priceless because he never could have imagined she would say such things to him. Now that the deal is done, Noel gives the man his 1 million payment and turns to leave with Walter. After this incident, Walter was left questioning his life choices and he is seriously considering quitting the whole seeker job, but Noel tells him this wasn't his fault. In this profession, you're going to meet a lot of people, and many of them will be backstabbers. Walter may not be mentally tough and may be slightly dumb, but Noel believes he's a gifted warrior, so he wants to continue to fight by his side and rebuild their party together. However, Walter can't bring himself to accept and refuses to live the life of a seeker after what just happened. Noel understood and accepted Walter's wishes, so as Walter was leaving the city, Noel wished him good luck with his future endeavors and bid him farewell. But as for him, he hasn't given up on his dream yet. He is disappointed that his party ended up being dissolved, but he refuses to let this stop him from becoming the strongest, so he intends to rebuild the Blue Beyond party and make it stronger than ever before. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.